Hello, I'm Cathy Clugston with the BBC News. A provincial mayor who's led a tough-talking presidential campaign in the Philippines has been declared the winner by one of his main rivals. Senator Grace Poe said Rodrigo Duterte was the clear leader in the ongoing count and had been chosen by a plurality of the people. Michael Bristow reports.
The results were not expected for a whole day, but just a few hours after the polls closed, one of the early favourites, Grace Poe, said her rival, Rodrigo Duterte, had won. She said the people had chosen their candidate. Mr Duterte has been cast as a man of the people, but it's not yet clear what kind of president he'll be. His tough talk on combating crime, even threatening to kill criminals, has clearly won him many supporters among voters, but drawn criticism from human rights groups.
The impeachment process against the Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff has been thrown into confusion. The acting Speaker of the lower house of Congress, Valdir Maranhão, has annulled last month's vote that allowed the proceedings to go on to the Senate. He's now called for a new vote. From Rio de Janeiro, Wira Davis reports.
It had been expected that later this week the Brazilian Senate would be voting in favour of a full impeachment trial against President Dilma Rousseff, forcing her suspension from office for the duration of the trial. But the whole process has been thrown into doubt after a completely unexpected ruling by the interim Speaker of the lower house of Congress to annul the impeachment process. After an acrimonious debate last month, the lower house voted overwhelmingly in favour of the impeachment process against the president.
A judge in Mexico has ruled that the drug lord Joaquin El Chapo Guzman can be extradited to the United States. He's wanted on charges of smuggling vast amounts of drugs into the country. He was caught in January after 6 months on the run, following his escape from a maximum security prison. From Mexico City, Katie Watson reports.
Only 2 days ago, the Mexican authorities transferred El Chapo to a prison close to the border with the US. It was, according to Mexican officials, a move that concerned security, not a precursor to extradition. But now a Mexican judge says the drug lord can be extradited to face charges in the United States. Any extradition, however, is likely to take some time. El Chapo's lawyers have already appealed any decision to move their client, and the Mexican Ministry of Foreign Affairs also has up to 30 days to decide whether or not to approve the extradition.
The Governor of North Carolina, Pat McCrory, has filed a suit to defend a new law that forces transgender people to use public toilets that match their sex at birth. The US Justice Department had given him until Monday to renounce the legislation, which was passed in March, but he's accused them of bullying. Federal funding for North Carolina state universities could be withheld if the law is put into practice. Rock stars, including Bruce Springsteen, have cancelled concerts in North Carolina because of the law. World News from the BBC. The Greek Finance Minister Euclid Tsakalotos says Eurozone countries have agreed to pave the way for a long-delayed instalment of a bailout loan. Finance ministers meeting in Brussels have been discussing the Greek government's implementation of policies it has agreed to undertake in order to receive financial assistance. Our economics correspondent Andrew Walker reports.
There was clearly progress at this meeting of Eurozone finance ministers, though they are not quite ready yet to hand over the loan payment that was originally planned for last year. Greece must still take further steps, including the creation of a privatisation fund and banking legislation. It also has to specify how it would make further spending cuts if it fails to meet financial targets in the coming years. But some finance ministers, including the influential Wolfgang Schäuble of Germany, expressed optimism about an agreement later this month.
The United States and Russia say they'll step up their efforts to convince Syria's warring parties to observe a cessation of hostilities that's supposed to be in force across the country. The two powers demanded an end to indiscriminate attacks on civilians, and the Russians said they would work to minimise the air operations of their Syrian government allies. The joint statement came as a shaky 5-day ceasefire specifically relating to the city of Aleppo was about to expire. The issues of peace and security in Europe have been seized on by the two sides in the referendum on whether Britain should leave the European Union. The senior figure in the Leave campaign, Boris Johnson, has dismissed as preposterous claims from the Prime Minister, David Cameron, that leaving the EU would make war in Europe more likely. Mr Cameron said the EU was essential to Britain's security. It's been announced that a long-awaited report into Britain's involvement in the war in Iraq will be published on July the 6th. The inquiry, led by Sir John Chilcot, was set up in 2009. He's been criticised for taking so long to complete its work. BBC News.
Yes. Welcome to the Earth Mystery Show. This is Monday, May 9th, 2016. I'm Haines Ely. You're listening to KVMR 89.5 FM, Nevada City, KCPC, Camino, Placerville. We're also on in Woodland at 104.7 FM and in Truckee at 105.1 FM and all over the world on kvmr.org. I have a neat guest today. This is something new for me and new for you. I have a young woman on the phone. Her name is Courtney Amundson, and she's written a book called Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within. And when most teenagers are worrying about wearing the right lip color or following the right YouTube star, Courtney Amundson is only worried about whether the messages she is astonishingly being delivered from the divine are reaching enough people. Because she was a 16-year-old when she began following the footsteps of Esther Hicks, Jane Roberts, Edgar Cayce, and other powerful channelers. She's now 19, and she wrote this book called Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within. So I haven't had too many people your age on my show, Courtney. Are you there?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really honored to be here.
Well, I think when your publicist told me about your book, I thought, I've had all these old goats on the show, and to have a kid that's younger than any of my children on the show, and someone so far advanced that you would be into channeling a book like this.
Yeah, I've always kind of been more on the leading edge in the sense that I've always felt young. I've always been around older people that are interested in this stuff, but it's been really cool for me, and now I'm hoping to kind of build the audience a little bit and get everyone interested in seeing the bigger picture.
Well, most people your age are into peer pressure to be like everybody else, to go to clubs and go dancing and to hang out and hook up with friends your own age and stuff like that. Do you have a lot of friends, or are you kind of a loner?
Well, I would say that I've been through my different phases in my life so far where I have, kind of tried to meld in with everyone else a little bit and get the right clothes and say the right things. And, I always kind of felt like out of resonance with my true self. And when I kind of figured that out and decided that being myself is the most important thing, then, I let go of some friends, and it's been okay because now I feel more fulfilled. I feel more secure within myself, and I can be who I am and only let those who are really on the same wavelength as me be my friends. So,
good call.
Of course, I'm still looking for, my tribe always, but I'm happy where I'm at right now.
How about guides? Do you have, other than like inner guides we'll talk about, do you have any people you look up to? Like, there are a lot of people in Nevada City where we are. There's quite a few spiritual communities here, and many people live in these spiritual communities, have children. So the children grow up looking up to the leader of the spiritual group. Mm-hmm. How about your family? Do you have like a family that's interested in this kind of metaphysical stuff that has introduced you to this?
Yeah, definitely. We've been into kind of the more leading edge, metaphysics and spirituality and, alternative kinds of healing for the body. Somebody that has been a really fundamental guide for me is actually a Qigong master here in Minnesota where I live. And I started studying Qigong when I was about 9 years old from him. And ever since then, he's kind of been my guide and mentor and friend too. So that's a cool relationship that I have cultivated, and but others I have really looked up to from a distance, like Esther Hicks. She was a guide and mentor for me. I listened to her recordings, and that was before I really started doing the same stuff myself. But I was interested in her work and Deepak Chopra and The Secret, the Law of Attraction materials. I was into all of that at a young age.
we've had a number of Qigong instructors or masters. Master Lee, I don't know his first name, has been on 4 or 5 times, and wonderful guy. He comes through Nevada City and gives seminars and retreats here, and we have a lot of Qigong people here. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a powerful art, and I've seen movies on YouTube with Qigong masters that can create balls of energy with their hands and move things with the energy balls, and it's quite impressive. But it also seems like a long-term study. You don't just do a couple of Qigong retreats and have this mastery.
Right. Yeah. So it takes a lot of dedication and practice, and it's kind of an internal cultivation, if you will. It's not a very scientific thing. It's more about tuning into yourself and being able to cultivate a relationship with the divine, and that's how we can really utilize our true potential as humans and help heal our physical bodies also.
So tell me how you got started on this book, Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within. What happened?
Yeah, it was a powerful time in my life when I was 16. I was at one of those places in my life where I felt more isolated, and I was doing online school, so at the I was kind of home alone every day, doing my work, being dedicated, but at the same time feeling like I couldn't really connect with people in a deep way, and so I started to go within myself, and I started to ask myself, deeper questions, like, what are you supposed to be doing in your life? What is your soul purpose? What does your soul want you to do? And so I kind of had this mission to, get out of my head and into my heart, and just to listen and be more conscious of, really what I was supposed to be doing. And so I started to do more meditation and more research about, things that I had previously been interested in, a few years prior, past lives and children who could recall their past lives. And all of this was so intriguing to me, and I kind of buried it for a few years because of school and stress, and then I realized, okay, this was really important to me, and my spirituality is really important to me, and I had an awakening point one day, and I remember it really vividly. It was March 12th, 2012, and I had been listening to Abraham Hicks that week, and just to get some guidance and just help me to feel more connected, and I remember taking a break from my schoolwork one day and sitting down to meditate, and I immediately felt this extreme sense of peace come over me, extreme sense of connectedness. And I sat there and I just kind of surrendered. I got to this point of just complete, utter surrender, and I basically said, not out loud, but inside, I said, whatever you need to show me, whatever you need to tell me, I'm listening, I'm here, and I just let go, and I moved into this incredibly amazing space, and I felt this angelic presence come into my body, and it's hard to explain. It was beyond any human emotion I had ever felt before. It was an unconditional love and a just effervescent light, just so pure, so striking when it hit me. And I remember kind of wanting to laugh and cry at the same time. I just didn't know how to feel, and I felt that there was an angel in my body or something amazingly profound. And I remembered that a similar thing had happened to Esther Hicks when she began her journey, and she started receiving these messages from the universe. And so I did what she did, and I went to the computer and I put my hands down on the keys, and when I did that, I felt like it all clicked. It fell into place, and that's what I was supposed to be doing. And then I immediately felt this light shooting out my fingertips, just blasting out my fingertips, and in a powerful but also really loving way. And the keys started to type, and I just let go, and I let the messages come through. And what came through was a amazing presence, these beings of love and light and guidance, incredible wisdom, beyond anything that I had ever heard or felt before, except for, of course, when I listened to other channelers. But this hit me in a really personal way, and that is what really started the journey. And I knew from that point that that was what I was supposed to be doing. That was my life's work, my life's mission, and it brought me so much enlightenment that I finally grew to this point where I decided it's time to put this in a book and share it, because it needs to be shared, I believe. So, that's a very shortened version of my journey.
My daughters can type while they're talking to you. They touch type, and I'm a hunt and peck two-finger guy, so I'm always impressed when I see people that type that fast. Are you one of those fast typers?
Well, I never was, but when this started, I became a furious typer, because I would sit there with my eyes closed, and my hands would move a million miles an hour, and I could never do that before. But now I'm a very fast typer.
I was in communication with Jane Roberts and Robert Butts when they were first starting out, and Jane Roberts would talk very, very slowly, almost like a person on big dose of Valium or something. And Robert Butts would print. He would actually print, not scribe, but print, little tiny print, letters about half the size of a typewriter letter size, on 3x5 cards as she was talking. And I was always impressed that these volumes, just, so many volumes of work from Seth, were hand printed in tiny little print. So I thought, wow, if she could type, she could have done this so much easier and so much faster, but she didn't type.
Right. I vaguely remember that, because I have read some of her work as well. So it's interesting how it's evolved and how I see the consciousness evolving. Very similar messages and foundation to the messages that I'm seeing, across the works of, the Seth material, the Abraham Hicks material, the Cryon material. Those I see as, kind of bigger ones that have been kind of more spread around. But I see it evolving, and that's really cool. That's really cool to be a witness to, I feel.
Well, I think every one of you channelers basically has the same message, and it's just how you present it and how it comes from the personality of the person that's channeling. And yours obviously is full of a lot of love and light and emotion, and Jane Roberts was sort of very intellectual and cold.
Right.
But I think the message is pretty much the same.
Yeah, I would agree with you. There tends to be an overall message, and I think that's proof of, the truth of who we really are at our core, at our, truest essence. And I think that's a validation to everyone on this planet right now that's seeking guidance and wanting to know more about how to evolve and grow.
Every age predicts the end of the world. I mean, there's a millennial kind of, like when 2000 came around, and we're full of doom porn right now. If you read the internet, boy, the world's coming to an end tomorrow. And in every age, if you read the writings of the Romans or the Greeks, they're talking about the end of the world. Or if you read the Old Testament, they're talking about the return of the Messiah and the world ending. It's a never-ending doom story. And yet your book, Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within, seems very cheerful. It seems like you're encouraging people to enjoy life and enjoy their moments, and everything's just the way it's supposed to be. Mm-hmm. It's kind of an antidote to the gloom thinking. So why do we have such a gloom program in so many people? Why are so many people looking down instead of up?
Well, because we're human beings with a limited perspective. We only see so much, and we don't have that bird's eye view that source energy does. And, you know, the way that I have been able to transcend some of that, not always, you know, permanently, but of course, when I'm in that space, when I move and meld with my higher self, I immediately get a sense of just ease, a sense of everything is in its perfect place, everything is okay. And it's only from that place where I can truly understand some of the most difficult, some of the most heart-wrenching events, and, you know, whether they're personal or global. I think it's one of the hardest things about being human is that we have this limited perspective. We're seeing from our human lens 24/7, and a lot of us don't even know that we can rise above that at our own will. And so it's easy to get up in that consciousness, in that spin of negativity, of doom and gloom, as you said. But it's also easy to ask yourself what's beyond that. Ask yourself, who am I really? Where did I come from really? And, you know, I think when you tune into that, when you have a motivation and a curiosity to understand, you know, this universe that we're part of, the God that we're part of, I can't see how we cannot be amazed at our own power, at the ability for us to put ourselves in this position of, you know, being in a small human being, in a small human box, and do it willingly, and do it because we see from the larger perspective, we see how we're going to be really benefiting the whole, and how our own light is so beneficial for the entire universe and beyond. I think that's incredible. I think that is more than hope. It is, you know, we're fighting for a greater plan. We are evolving more than we know. And so I think it requires us to go deeper within ourselves, to find a deeper spiritual connection to that wholeness, whatever it is for you personally, whether you call it God or source energy or the universe or love or Jesus, you know, whatever it is, it's about that connection. And when we do that, there's magic there, there's potential there, and room for growth, room for moving out of the fear and out of the doubt. So I know it's there, but I also know it's really hard sometimes. It's hard to not get caught up in it and really feel bogged down by it.
Our guest today on the Earth Mystery Show is Courtney Amundson, and she's written a book called Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within. And I have to announce, since it's 12:30, that you're listening to KBMR 89.5 FM, Nevada City, KCPC, Camino, Placerville. Courtney, one of my favorite images is a picture I saw on the internet of a homeless man with a dog, and the caption on the picture was, "Would somebody please tell this dog it's homeless?" And I was reminded of that as you were talking, because the two, the dog and the man, they're living the same life. The dog is wagging his tail and bright-eyed and just enjoying every moment, and the man is downcast and, homeless and very, feeling very sorry for himself, but they're living the same life.
Exactly. It reminds me of, as children, if we get hurt, if we skin our knee, we don't cry until we look up at our parents. And if our parents, gasp and look shocked, we will start crying, but we don't have that reaction until we
see what others think of
their reaction.
Yeah. So you said we came here, and I agree. We came here as souls. We came into these bodies. Why do we forget? What's the reason that we don't remember? Why we came here?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the reason that we did it. A big part of it is we want to feel what it feels like to not know, because the journey of seeking, the journey of finding, is a joy. It's a game, and it's hard to understand that from this perspective. And there's been so many times where I just want to pinch myself, like, why did I do this? Why did I do this? But then when I'm not caught up in the emotions about it, I understand. I understand that it's a journey of finding ourselves in a new way, of deepening, of discovering new aspects about ourselves. And that's how we grow on a soul level. This experience is about soul growth. And if we knew everything, there would be no fun about it. When we're at our perfected state, we're just at a plateau. Our soul wants to grow. It wants to find new aspects. It wants to experience joy. It wants to experience emotions. The human experience is very much about emotions, very much about learning the polarity of emotions and how it affects us on every plane, on every dimension. And so, that's the larger view thinking. Why we forget.
This is, I always play the devil's advocate with everybody, whatever position you take. I bounce a different one. And one of the things, when you're saying it's about emotions, if that's really the case, then why don't all of us have Down syndrome? Why don't we all? Down syndrome people seem to be universally happy. They have a lot of they seem to just emote, but they don't think well. So their thought processes are turned way down and their emotions are turned way up. And if this incarnation is really about feeling emotions, why aren't we all Down syndrome people?
Well, we all have our own soul purpose. I said it's about emotions because collectively I think the human experience is a lot about, experiencing those human things, such as emotions, such as being in physical bodies. Everyone has their own challenges, whether it's Down syndrome, whether it's, another kind of mental illness, whether it's depression, whether it's, and it doesn't even need to be a mental illness. It doesn't need to be a illness or, anything like that, a medical thing. We all go through these periods of growth, and we all learn, how to stretch ourselves. And sometimes it comes in the form of a painful experience. Sometimes it takes like a death in the family to shake you up and make you question yourself, make you question what you're doing. I think there's so many experiences that can challenge us, that can bring us to that place of, really growing on a soul level. So I don't think that requires us to all be in that one experience, as you said, maybe Down syndrome, because we all have our own motivations. We all have our own ways of growing, because we're all on a different journey.
How about the collective journey? As a group, humanity creates the collective consciousness, and the collective consciousness kind of determines, what happens in physicality in the world, whether it's weather, volcanoes, nuclear disasters, radiation, all those kind of things begin in consciousness on some point. Mm-hmm. What do you see as the consciousness, the collective consciousness of all of us? Where are we going?
Well, it's an ever-evolving journey, of course, always, but, I see that we're shedding a lot right now. That's what I've experienced on a personal level, and that's what I've seen on a global level, is we're working through a lot. We've been spinning in the same juices for a while, if you get what I mean. We've been kind of recreating the same old story over and over and over again. And, that works out in, what we're seeing with politics, what we're seeing with medicine, what we're seeing with the school system, so many different ways that we're seeing this, where this old energy, these old ways of thinking and dealing with things are coming up to the surface. And what I see in the larger scheme of things is that we're being asked to redefine this. We're being asked to say, do we want this anymore, or do we want to get rid of this? And it has to happen on a massive scale. It has to be everyone, together being in agreement. Not necessarily, and the way that I mean that is, some really big events that have happened in my lifetime, and I'm thinking of maybe like 9/11. That was a huge mass emotional scale event, and it tipped everything, and it really and Lee Carroll talks a lot about this. If listeners want to learn more about that, it's really interesting how that changed the energy forecast, if you will. And so it's about us all collectively having a desire, getting on the same wavelength, same side of the scale, and really declaring what we want. Where do we want to move together? So I feel like we're kind of still testing the waters. We're figuring out whether it's too risky or not to make that jump. And so I see that playing out with politics right now, just without even getting into everybody's different opinions. We're seeing everyone being really opinionated, everyone having really strong emotions, really strong energy, and it's showing that people want change. People want change. And so we're working through that, but honestly, I just see that we're shedding so much old stories, and we're in the process of rebuilding, making new stories, making new future. And on a personal level, people are working through their own stuff. They're shedding their own personal stuff, coming to a point in their own evolution where they have to look at their greatest challenges in their life, the things that are the biggest triggers, the biggest boulders. And I can vouch for that, doing that myself. It's really powerful. It can be really challenging, but it's going to be so gratifying, and it's going to be really exciting. It will. It's just the growing pains. That's the challenging part. I've lived a lot longer than you have, and I've seen a lot in this world, and seen a lot of false starts, like the 60s were kind of a false start of the hippies and the flower generation. Everybody thought, oh my God, the world's going to really change. All these people are going to bring in love, light, and peace. And somehow it didn't happen. And I feel that's coming around again with your generation, with kids, that everything that happens is what you want and what we all want. And I think the people in my generation look back and say, we really wanted the world to be a peaceful, loving,
fair, just place without wars, without poverty, with everybody. There's enough in the world for everybody to eat. There's enough for everybody to have a good living, and yet it's so skewed, and it's happening more and more visibly how skewed it is that the top 1% or the top 0.1% have all the wealth and control everything, and the military-industrial complex creates wars just for the sake of profit. Doesn't matter how many people get killed or what kind of damage is done to the world. And the nuclear industry is off the charts bad as far as poisoning the world. The Monsanto crowd with the GMO foods poisoning the world. I mean, these things, the pendulum has swung so far toward what I would call evil, and I think everybody would agree is evil. The pendulum has swung so far, it's got to go the other direction. And usually pendulums overswing. Usually pendulums go a little farther than you think they're going to go. Mm-hmm. My personal impression is that the economy is going to drastically change. The debt that's been taken on under Obama has like tripled the national debt in the last 9 years or so, and no matter who's at fault, it's the world being run by a very tiny group of people that are not good, and that pendulum is going to swing the other way. And I think that your book, Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine, has so much optimism and so much love and so much cheerfulness to it. It seems like you've got a group of cheerleaders in your background. They're all yelling, go, 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 that things are going to go just great.
Right. And we have to be conscious of what we're creating, too. And I feel like that's what is really beautiful about the book, is that it's not just showing us a optimistic point of view. It's not just showing us, here's a fairy tale kind of picture. It's very much like, here's what you can be at your human capacity. Here's what you can be if you are dedicated, if you decide to really use your tools. And when we are conscious of our place in this universe, when we're conscious that we are co-creators, when we're conscious that we are either feeding the positivity or the negativity, then we can start turning things around. But it will take people to be conscious and not making choices out of fear, but out of love and serving ourselves first. I think there's a lot to be worked through, but it all starts on the personal level. It really does.
I agree with you. And what can the person do, other than read your book, that when Jane Roberts' first books came out, Seth said, you create your own reality. Your beliefs create your own reality. There was a big backlash against that. People were saying, that's so cruel to say that to someone who's suffering. How can you say that? And yet I think your book says the same thing, but not as bluntly, but more gently. But how do you create a reality? How do you know what your beliefs are that are creating your reality? What can a person do to change them for the better?
Well, I think it takes an honest look at yourself. You have to be willing to take all the veils down and to look at yourself in the raw. And that is a very difficult thing to do, and I think that goes along with what you're asking. How do you know how to do that? How do you have the courage to do that? I've always had a seeking and yearning, and I feel that was innate. It was just, I had a desire to go deeper, to learn more about myself, and I got to a point where I was willing to strip it all down because I just wanted to be the best person I could. I wanted to ultimately just know myself well enough so that I can understand the world around me. See myself in a clear way so that I can see the world clearly, because I understand that it's a mirror. And so I think, honestly, to break it down, you have to have that inner yearning, because without that, my book is just a book. To me, my book is an alive magic book. And to me, it's my story of awakening and it's humanity's story of awakening. The way it impacted me is not the same way it's going to impact someone else. But I have realized that it goes as deep as you're willing to go. And, that's how this, material really came to the surface, is because I wanted to go there, and I had so much profound wisdom come out that I never knew I had, but the only way that could have come up is from me asking, from me saying, I want to know more, I want to go deeper, please show me the way. And that doesn't come from a place of smallness. It comes from a place of empowerment, of saying, I know I am that. I know I am part of God. I know I am part of this wholeness. I know that I am co-creating. So what can I do on my own part? How can you help me? And I'm saying this like as my conversation with the universe. How can you help me to see clearly enough? And I will just ask for guidance every day, and I will try to stay humble in knowing that I don't know all the answers, and I will try to stay in this mindset that I am that greatness, and yet there's always room for growth, and yet I am a human being that always has room for learning and room for seeking. So if you want to truly grow and expand, if you truly want to go deeper into your personal practice or your personal relationship with the divine, then you have to put in that effort. And that sounds pretty obvious, I think, but it's not the way that you might picture it. It's not about saying, okay, I'm going to go to church and I'm going to do this. And it's not about you have to do this. It's about a true desire to know the God within you and allow yourself to say, yes, I am that. Because a lot of people don't think they are that. A lot of people think they're small. They think that they're smaller than God, or they feel separate from God. And having that mindset does not allow us to co-create. It separates us. It limits us. So you almost have to get over that hump first, and then you start to have this relationship with God, with the universe, that is personal. I always felt like when I was channeling this book, it was my best friend. This amazing source of love was my best friend. And I felt the closest that I've ever felt to anything before, anything that you would call heaven. And so just allow yourself, give yourself the time to go within. And I promise you, if that's your biggest motivation and it's a heartfelt, humble intention, that you will continue to learn and grow, and it will be at the perfect pace, and you'll get the perfect guidance at the right time.
I'm going to read the listeners a little bit from your book, if you don't mind, so that they can hear what the channeling sounds like. The divine that holds you so gently, that is never separate from you, still appears separate in your perspective. We tell you our metaphor, our story behind it. For you see, a grain of sand is very small, a very small particle that cannot be of any use until there are many grains together. When the many grains come together, sand is born. Sand is very heavy and powerful when there are many tons of it, you see. But when only a handful of sand is there, well, then it's light and insignificant. So it is for your earth. You are a collective consciousness like this sand. As more of you come together as grains of sand, you get more powerful, more heavy, and you're able to push through many big obstacles as one. Through your personal experience, you know what great struggles life can bring you. Some say it is a test, and others say it is fate. There are many views and many perspectives. Let us give you the way we see it, for we think you will like it greatly. From this bird's eye view, as we often describe it to you, We see many paths, many options all at once. There is never a right or a wrong pathway. Therefore, we cannot always give specifics to questions that you may be asking if it involves a timeline, but we will help you to better understand why you have been living on this earth and why exactly the experience has brought you here. For indeed, many of you see no point in it, and we say, indeed, we can see why you would think in such a way. Many of you live much more dully than you're used to in your natural state of well-being. What we mean by that is your non-physical counterpart is much more alive and awake in terms of who you are and your capabilities. When coming back to the karma planet, you come to fulfill your desires and your cravings, to experience in a new fashion. Indeed, all you have individual goals, individual passions, and individual energies that want to be funneled in a specific direction. From our point of view, it's all the same. You're all here essentially for the same purpose, co-creating divine love and light. We want you to see what we mean, for it is hard to explain. So it goes on. But I just wanted the listeners to hear what the kind of writing comes through you.
Yeah, I love that part, and I forgot about that part. There's so many nuggets in there that really do just give us perspective, but in a not harsh way, in a really everything's okay kind of way. It makes people smile, like it makes people feel more lighthearted about this, and I think that's the most important.
Well, I like that sentence that says, many of you live much more dully than you're used to in your natural state of well-being. It's like when we wake up from a dream that's just been wonderful, it's colorful, we're flying, we're seeing scenery that's just unbelievable, and we wake up and we're in our dull bedroom and everything's slow and dark and nothing like the dream. And I think I get that from your book, that there's so much brightness and aliveness in this inner state that you're in your natural state of well-being compared to the dull lives that we live.
And I think, and I know this from personal experience, the more that we, where we put our attention is where our energy goes. And when I was in the middle of this, caught up in the middle of this, and channeling this book and having an incredible, just an incredible state I was going through at the time, I did not perceive the world in the same way. I was living in the same house. I was doing the same schoolwork. I was, in the same neighborhood on my walk every day. But I perceived everything so differently. I saw light. I saw, sparkles in the air as I walked around. It was like a different reality. And it shows me that we can move into a different vortex, being in the same location, but being in a heightened place, in a heightened energy, so that we can experience joy, just like you talked about with the homeless man and the homeless dog. The dog had no idea because he's in a different place, and not physically, but emotionally, in a different place, spiritually, and that can sometimes make all the difference. So sometimes it's about cultivating that inner life, and it mirrors to your outer life.
Your book, Teachings from God, Greeting Your Soul and Revealing the Divine Within, where can people get it?
Well, you can get it on my website. That is teachingsfromgod.com. Teachingsfromgod.com, all one word. Mm-hmm. And you're Courtney Amundson, and you're 19 years old, correct? I am 20 now.
Oh, my goodness, you're growing old. I think the listeners have to be impressed. I'm certainly impressed. They're just, like I said when we started the show, there just aren't that many 20-year-olds around who have your depth, and you're just starting out is the cool thing. This is your first book. I can't wait to see what your 10th book is like.
Me too.
Well, it's almost like you've said it all in this book. So what more? That'll be the interesting thing to find out. What more? What more can we learn? And it'll be interesting as the world evolves. I think we're from my point of view, from my age, everything's happening faster. And I think it's true that time's speeding up, things are speeding up. The evolution of all the planets, the sun, everything is speeding up. And so I think within your lifetime, you're going to see the denouement of humanity, what we're going to do.
It's going to be interesting, and I especially like this one. I saw Lee Carroll live in person once, and Cryon said, or what did he say? He said, you won't miss it. You'll be here. You'll be here. And I thought that was cool, because I think I've always had this fear of missing out on the best part.
No, not in your lifetime. You're gonna be here for it.
But I think we're all gonna be here for it. I think, we've all put in so much effort, so much energy into this, and we're working together. So we'll be here. We'll be watching. That's for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Courtney. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to following your career.
Thank you so much for having me on, and thank you to everyone who's listening.
Thank you. Okay, I'll say bye-bye. Interesting young woman, eh? How many people are 20 years old writing books like that? Before we go today on the Earth Mystery Show, we've got to thank, for the last hour of support, Halo Herb Shop. Halo presents the 2016 Spring Herbal Medicine Field Series with Rachel Berry beginning in May 21st. This 4-class program guides locals in discovering Nevada County plants for natural health and wellness. Early bird registration ends April 30th. More information at halo.org. The Fat Radio Hour is coming up in just a minute with Felton Pruitt. And I'd like to thank Carl Chalette for his show before mine this morning. He had the Brazilian musicians playing live here in the studio, and I thought I was listening to a CD. And I walked in and saw these guys sitting and playing and went, holy mackerel, they are good. We are so blessed in Nevada County to have such great musicians. Until the next show that I'm on, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, there'll be world peace. We'll go out with a little bit of Otis Rush.